Good evening and welcome to the City of Colwood Planning and Land Use Committee meeting for Monday, January 5th, 2026. First off, we acknowledge with respect that we're meeting on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples. We are honored to have the opportunity to build strong working relationships with the people of the Songhees and Kisepsan nations. I'd like to call the meeting to order and look for approval of the agenda. Bear with me here. Just any motion to approve the agenda for this evening's meeting? Thank you. I have Kathleen. All those in favor? Motion approved. Look to adopt the minutes from the meeting of October the 8th, 2025. If I could get a motion to approve those minutes. Thank you. Double motion, simultaneous from Trina and Kathleen. All those opposed? Trick question. Nobody's opposed. Attention. There we go. Even it being a new year and everyone's still focused here. Okay, so we've adopted the minutes, so we'll move to public participation. I don't see anybody here. I don't think there's anybody online. No. Okay, so no public participation this evening. So that will lead us to new business, item 5.1. This is a great new feature we have here, Planning and Land Use Committee biannual update from Mairi, our Manager of Planning. So I will turn it over to Mairi for the presentation.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Good evening, committee, and Happy New Year. So yes, this is our biannual update. The presentation has been published on the agenda for tonight's meeting. And the presentation just summarizes the applications that you reviewed in the second half of 2025 from May to October 2025. Each slide provides an update on this current status of those applications that you reviewed and where they're at in the council process. I can leave it up to the committee. I can walk you through the entire presentation. We can also just go straight to questions if you had any specific questions on any of the applications. We also have a slide at the end of the PowerPoint just to get some feedback from the committee about the applications that you've been reviewing, to see if you still see value in all of those application types that you have reviewed. So I'll perhaps leave it to the committee to see what you would like to do.
So just throw that out to the committee. I'd spoken with Mairi just prior to the meeting to see, do we want to walk through each of the proposals that came forward, or if anyone has specific questions on an individual project or application and its status, or if we want to move into the summary perhaps and talk a bit about the application types and then some of the questions that the staff have put forward here. So I see the first question from Kathleen.
Not a question, a statement. I've read the progress check-in and the update, much appreciated. But I don't feel any need to kind of just go through what I've read. So long as the rest of the committee has also read it.
It seems as if we have consensus there. So I didn't want to presume. That's why I thought I'd ask everybody, but I think we've all had a look. And I would second what you added, that I appreciate the work done on this. I think it's really great to see a summary like this in that form. Although it seems like we did a lot more work than that. So if we could embellish next time or something, but maybe Mairi, we could ask you just to talk a little bit about the questions that you have there and what you're looking to see from the committee, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. So this slide just is a high-level summary of the terms of reference. So the Planning and Land Use Committee reviews applications for amendments to the OCP, amendments to the land use bylaw, TUPs, and some policy work. So within the past year, certainly rezoning applications are the most frequently seen applications that have been reviewed by you. We've also had DBPs, we've had a few policy work, and then housekeeping amendments. Looking into 2026, we do expect for more policy work to be coming toward the committee as well. So that's just something to expect for the next year. But we really just wanted to get your feedback about how you have been feeling about applications. Do you see value in all of the applications that we have brought forward to you? Are there any applications that you would prefer to just go straight to council? Noting that council always can refer applications back to the committee. Do you see value reviewing DVPs or those housekeeping amendments? I think sometimes when we're doing agenda planning, we did have a meeting last year, I believe it was 8 minutes long. And, I think it's really important that we ensure that we're still bringing applications forward and that we're not delaying them because we don't necessarily have an agenda item. So I think that could potentially be an opportunity to send something straight to a council meeting. And not having an 8-minute meeting, but I'll leave that to the committee to discuss.
Great, thank you. And I think that's good food for thought. As you said, there are times when you've got a couple significant proposals before the committee that require a lot of advanced reading and thought and and constructive kind of analysis. And then other times there are those sort of housekeeping amendments that it's a 10-minute thing and we can move past it. I'm pretty open-minded about it. I do know though that everybody has a life outside of here. I hear talk about little children and adult children and children in the middle, and and I think if we can use our time wisely, I'd rather put in quality time than measure quantity. That's just my personal opinion. So I think some of the housekeeping amendments and things. I mean, we really only saw one in 2025, so I would suggest that maybe that's something that we could forward just straight to council because it's kind of a rubber stamp item. But I think the bulk of the work was rezoning, as we can see here in 7 of those, and I think those are critical to come before the committee and get a unique perspective and ask some of the questions ahead of time before it hits council. But that's my 2 cents. I'll seek other opinions. I see Kathleen here again, so we'll go over.
From just my personal point of view, I like having my fingers in all the pies, including housekeeping, and perhaps that has something to do with my training, but I do kind of like to be able to see that. And apart from my own personal feelings, I think context is really important too. And the less we meet and the less we discuss certain issues, I think we lose some really valuable context. I personally don't have an issue showing up for a short period of time and would actually prefer to have more short committee meetings. But those are just my views. So I'm good with status quo.
Great, appreciate that. And thanks, Kathleen. It's a great perspective. I think I'm a little biased because I'm here for other things. So to me, it's a larger world. But I think when you're looking at this in context, then that absolutely makes sense. I see James has feedback here. Mr. Perry.
Yeah, I was going to echo very similar sentiments. For the most part, I haven't felt that my time has been wasted. I've enjoyed having levels of insights on the smaller things that may easily get missed. I confess to not watch every single council meeting, so things that do go through, I may not be privy to or like as aware of as I could be through the stuff that's available. The hard stuff when it comes to like variance permits or like what we consider housekeeping is like where's that line as to like what is stuff that can go straight to council that we can all agree on and what that might be something that people weigh in on, and that's a hard thing to measure. And I'm sure there'll be sort of moments of like whiplash where something goes through. It's like, well, how come we didn't get a chance to see that type stuff? And for the most part, I don't have any concerns with like what's being brought forward. So if there's a way to quantify how you would measure like a substantial variance permit versus an insubstantial variance permit, that way we can kind of understand where you're trying to set the line and what the bar is for the smaller stuff versus the bigger stuff. Thank you.
Great, thanks, James. Any other comments or anything? Katrina. Oh, wait, no, I think you gotta hit it one more time. Disappeared.
I kind of agree with both parties, like Ian and Kathleen, and
So I liked seeing a lot this year because I think this is my first full year of being on the land use committee. So, I didn't find that the meetings, I think if the meetings were like, oh, every time we meet, they're 3.5 hours, let's try to cut something back. But I don't really think that that's the case. But I totally appreciate where Ian's coming from, and he's here a lot more than we are. So, I'm, to be honest, happy with either or, but I do like seeing more than not.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. And I certainly don't want to be thought of as, okay, I'm looking to shorten the meetings. I think what I just would, no, no, I know you're not saying that, but I just want to make sure that we're getting value out of it. And I think we have. I mean, generally, I feel like that's the consensus, that we get value and we add value. I think from a staff perspective, there's not a lot of time wasted in this committee. I know other committee meetings can run longer. There's a lot of different approaches to managing the meetings. I think as chair, I try to keep it pretty efficient. But that being said, it isn't about trying to cut anything short. So I think the consensus is, let's kind of keep it as is for now. I would ask that we just try to consolidate things when, if it's just one item for a meeting, maybe we bump it to the next one and make it a more robust meeting. But beyond that, I would also, just from a committee standpoint, back to staff, I would think if there's an opportunity to engage with the committee more frequently, I think on items, like if we have an opportunity to, visit a development site, if that's an open invitation, just to share that with committee. I've done that informally once or twice, where, often, almost in every case, the developer will reach out to members of council and say, come visit the site. You obviously have to understand there's a biased perspective, but I find there's balance in meeting with the neighbors and meeting with the developers. And I think if committee members are interested, I think to be able to give them that opportunity formally versus an informal shout out from myself, if it helps you arrive at a more informed decision, I think the more we can do with that, the better. I recognize those circumstances are kind of limited. It doesn't crop up all the time, but just something to keep in mind. I'll go back to Kathleen here for a second round.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo that sentiment and say that I truly appreciate the opportunities to see a site. I often have difficulties when it's just a paper presentation to really grasp what it is that is happening and what's being asked for. And so seeing the physical site, even if we can't do it by having a site visit, even having more kind of graphic representations, it really the visuals help immensely from my perspective. I mean, I'm a very visual person, but nevertheless, I think we've got some heads nodding here as well. So
Sure. And actually that begs the question, sorry, and James, I'll come to you in just a moment. I know when council has questions, we have the sort of the overarching rule is there's one employee of council, which is the CAO. And so we direct any questions we might have on something to the CAO, who then finds the appropriate staff member to answer that in advance of a meeting. For the committee, what would be the line of communication for the committee? Are they to go to the committee chair? Are they to go to the CAO? Just out of curiosity, if they were looking at the agenda package for this evening and went, I want to ask more questions about this from staff. Is there a prescribed approach to take there? I honestly don't know. That's why I asked. It wasn't to be tricky.
No, that's a great question. I was just saying to Mari, it is certainly fine for those inquiries to go directly to the staff that's named on the agenda, the staff that's responsible for that agenda item, and to ensure that the CAO is included in that correspondence. It doesn't need to go through the committee chair. There can be outreach, absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted clarity there, just in case. I know, people are doing their research, and sometimes you come across something to be helpful to ask the expert. So I'll go to Mr. Perry here for a second round. You go, sir.
Yeah, I meant to mention that as like not necessarily a compromise, but like a meet in the middle. If there's things that you feel that would be just like a rubber stamp situation, I don't know if it's reasonable or valid from a process perspective, just to like canvas us via email in the same way that you invite us to these meetings, to say like this is like a loose agenda that we're considering. Is this something that you'd want to just pass on to council or not, and then kind of make up your mind from there based on any feedback you get. So not sure if that's a valid way to gather that amount of insight.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but decisions can only be made at a meeting, not via email.
Okay, so I think we've provided feedback. I hope that helps answer the questions. The only other question I had that popped into my head earlier today was in terms of all of the activities identified, you know, that occurred in 2025 for the committee, do we have any sense of kind of how that compares to some of the other municipalities? I know it's a little apples to oranges, but you know, similar size municipalities in terms of volume of work and maybe in terms of you know, applications denied, deferred, projects completed, you know, are there metrics out there that we could compare against or?
That's a great question. I think that's certainly something that we can bring forward to our next update, that we can take a look at other municipalities ahead of our June update. What I can offer is I think certainly there have been a decrease in particularly rezoning applications, and that's certainly market driven. I think there has been a slowdown in development. At the City of Colwood, development permits are, of course, delegated to staff. And so at Colwood, you do not see development permits, but in other municipalities, development permits are not delegated. So they would go to committee or council. So that is one difference between other municipalities, but that's something that we can certainly bring forward at the next update.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other questions on this item? Okay, seeing none, there is no vote to be held here. Just an acknowledgement of appreciation for the report. Thank you. That will take us to item 5.2, the zoning amendment application, the text amendment to the CD30 zone, and Richard is going to walk us through that.
Yeah, good evening, Chair and committee members. Happy 2026. Okay, so before us tonight, the zoning amendment application RZ0031, which seeks to make a couple of text amendments to the CD30 zone. My presentation is intended to walk you through key components of the staff report. So as mentioned, there are two proposed text amendments outlined in the staff report. The first is the expansion of the hotel and motel permitted uses to areas 1 and 8 of the CD30 zone. The second amendment is a technical adjustment of rear yard setbacks. It's requested to improve development flexibility on low density lots. So I've included here a brief overview of the OCP's Seaside Village land use designation. I'll move ahead to the map here. On the map on the left, you'll see the area in red. That's the Seaside Village land use designation. You'll see it's comprised of, you know, it covers a couple neighborhoods in the Beachlands area, including the Bluffs and the landing area, the entirety of the landing area, actually. So back to some components here. So this is important because areas 1 of 8 of the CD30 zone fall within this designation. And the Seaside Village land use designation is one of Colwood's 2 primary centers for cultural, civic, economic, and public life. This is alongside with Colwood Corners. So it's envisioned as a major hub that reflects Colwood's coastal identity and supports a complete integrated neighborhood. Some key policy directions seek to encourage a diverse mix of uses, creating self-sufficient integrated neighborhood, support varied housing types. This is to ensure inclusivity and meet diverse household needs, create high quality walking and cycling connections, develop a vibrant public realm, inviting gathering spaces and adjacent to active ground floor uses, promote green infrastructure and green spaces, and ensure strong transit connectivity. All right, so as mentioned, I've included the following maps that demonstrate the land use designations in the neighborhoods of the CD30 zone. So as mentioned, that's the Bluffs, the landing, and the headlands. This is important as I'll dive right into the landing neighborhood. So the landing neighborhood is intended to be compact in itself. It's a mixed-use hub connecting the community to the waterfront. It's with an activated shoreline creates a central pedestrian-focused neighborhood node. The area is is intended to have increased residential density to support housing choice and as well as sustain the local services and commercial uses found within. Next slide. So as previously mentioned, the first proposed amendment is to add the hotel and motel use in areas 1 and 8. You'll see them highlighted up on that map. It's important for me to note that in the for area 8 and 1, but within the the landing neighborhood, area 8 is the only area that does not currently permit hotel and motel uses. So 4, 5, and 6 do include the hotel and motel uses within the landing neighborhood. So the waterfront location within area provides a prime setting for future growth and investment. Area 1 represents the, let's pause right there for a second. So one thing to note about the area 8 is that it is separated into two areas, area 8A and 8B. But it's important to note that all that isn't contained within the regulations for area 8. They're not separated out specifically within the zone. The uses aren't anyway. So for area 1, which is along the Machosen roadside of the Bluffs neighborhood, it represents the last remaining opportunity for commercial development in the Bluffs neighborhood, as there are active applications for the area in area 2. And area 1 will benefit from proximity to the museum site and commercial sites of the Royal Bay side of the Machosen Road. Those are as I mentioned, those 2 areas in red are the ones that are proposed to include hotel and motel uses. All right, the second amendment. So the second amendment is to rear yard setbacks, and this is to applies to only to areas 3 and 7 of the CD30 zone. So those are the 2 areas in red on the map on the left. And the proposed amendment is to rear yard setbacks of only the 1 and 2 family dwelling units. So you'll notice that there are lots already created in area 3 of this zone. So the amendment reduces the rear setback from 6.5 meters to 5 meters for 1 and 2 family dwelling units, dwelling lots. This is responding to the lots that were created are potentially restrictive at 18-meter depths. So when considering a 6-meter rear yard setback and a 6-meter front yard setback, you're left with 6 meters. The change improves development potential and efficient use of smaller lots while maintaining appropriate separation for private outdoor space and maintaining the neighborhood character. This change also could streamline approvals by reducing the number of potential variance requests, and establishes consistent regulation and provides clear expectations for residents and builders. Communication. So should the public hearing be waived, communications will be issued following the standard procedures. You'll notice that within the staff report, the staff recommendation, you'll notice there's an option for council to not hold a public hearing. Should the Planning and Land Use Committee forward the staff recommendation to council, sorry, it's up there. Should the Planning and Land Use Committee forward the staff recommendation to council, council must decide whether or not to waive the public hearing. Although the amendment is consistent with the official community plan, a public hearing is not prohibited because the amendment includes non-residential uses. The prohibition on public hearings applies only to residential developments. So should Planning and Land Use forward the staff recommendation, council will then have to determine whether that public hearing will be waived. And then from there, staff will issue public notification and bring the amendment forward for readings. And with that, that's my presentation.
Great, thank you, Richard. I have a number of notes, but I'll go to committee first to see. I see Kathleen is waiting here. There you go.
Hi, I wanted to ask, I'll get a little bit of elaboration on the rationale for not having a public hearing. I'm assuming it's because it's probably not terribly controversial, but wondering why. What's the rationale for waiving the hearing?
Yes, so legislation allows the community to waive the public hearing if the rezoning matches the OCP. In this case, it would meet the OCP. The prohibition, however, which we have for housing developments, is based only on strictly residential developments. So this wouldn't meet the prohibition. So, but the staff recommendation is that we waive the public hearing.
Okay, any more questions? Yeah, you're still going. Oh, you're not? Okay, let's try that again.
So in
You're
essence,
back.
were this simply a residential matter, it would be prohibited. And this is pretty much residential. So there's my rationale, correct?
Well, I would also mention that this meets the intent of the OCP.
Yeah.
And that's the core of the rationale.
Absolutely. Thank you.
If I may, I'll also just add, if the public hearing is waived, notices will still be sent in advance of first, second, and third reading, just as other rezoning applications. So there will still be an opportunity for the public to speak to the application and receive information on it.
Great, thank you, Mary. I see Katrina, I believe. Oh, James is next. There you go. No,
Doesn't
James
matter.
is live
Yeah,
at the moment.
I'll go.
Yeah.
Just for two things to confirm, right? We're bundling all of these three requests ultimately, right? We have area 1 and area 8 both asking for some amendments to what can be built there. In addition, the setbacks, and so it's currently worded as like an all or nothing. We either put it all forward or none of it. That's not necessarily a question because I already know the answer, and just making sure it's clear. The second one is for the motel and hotel being built on 1 and 8. Can anyone provide background insight as to why it was excluded originally? And no, it's totally fine.
Yeah, thank you. And to your first point, so yes, you're correct in that there are three separate amendments, but the committee can vote on each of them independently if that is how the committee wishes to do that. So that's just a comment on your first comment. I think at the time of the development of the sub-area plan that was embedded into the OCP, that was the time when we created the zone that created all of those different areas with a list of permitted uses. At that time, the property owners would have had a sort of conceptual plan in mind. I think that they're just wanting some more flexibility in the permitted uses, particularly the commercial component of beachland. So I think as they progress the property forward and create plans, I think that they just want more flexibility. I know that the applicants are online if they wish to add anything as well.
All right, so when I think of what, or I'll start with the easy part. Area 1 to me feels like a no-brainer. That strip of area that's close to the commercial sector is a perfect candidate for a hotel or motel. It's right along a active transit area. It's easy access for people to get in and out without congesting any sort of side roads. And so to Mari's point, I think it would be in our benefit to split these items out individually, since the rewording for area 1 feels very appropriate. For area 8, when I look at that particular area and when I'm down there personally, and when I have a vision for what Royal Bay and the beachlands can be, I want the waterfront area, or at least an area that is a area of congregation that's walkable and accessible, and these areas will still have a lot of commercial opportunity. When I think of what a hotel would introduce in that particular area is a high amount of transit in terms of, you know, cars per unit, as well as the hill that they would be traversing. So like getting more cars further into the neighborhood rather than keeping them along Machosen and then asking people to walk around Royal Bay and sit around in a plaza, play at a park, etc. So I just see more concrete, less ocean view, less trees, less park. And these are already areas that other commercial opportunities exist. So it's not like we're wiping the slate. And when you think of the height of Machosen Road over Area 6 as an example, you can build a tall hotel without impeding the skyline and still providing all those services that we would want of a hotel. So yeah, touched on transit and traffic, congregation of people, the view, and what I guess I just also don't see is like how would this benefit the city of Colwood and the people of Colwood? I understand that it's a request and it's an application for some rewording, but I don't see any benefit there. And from your perspective, Ian, rather than moving into the setbacks and laying out my points, should we kind of just take pause, talk about this one, and then go to those, or should I?
I'm happy to split it into two if you like, because that's sort of how I approached it as well, is I think they are almost two separate issues within one. So happy to come back to you if you want to feed into that one.
Sure. I actually see it as three. I want the language for area 1 and the language of area 8 as individual items, as well as the setback as an individual item. So maybe the first thing we do is split the three into individual.
Well, I think we're looking at a formal motion or something to do that at this point. I'm thinking just in terms of discussion right now.
Sure.
I think if you want to discuss all your points now, feel free, or we can split it into kind of the hotel zone issue and the setback issue, because those are distinctly separate.
Okay.
At least even the 1 and 8 zones are on the same
Yeah.
time frame. Up to you. If you want to continue into the setback piece, feel free.
No, I think there's plenty to talk about in that topic, and like since they're so distinct, I didn't want to kind of muddy the waters and overspill my personal thoughts. So I'd like to make a motion that we do split this into multiple items. Personally, I see area 1 as one item, area 8 as another item, followed by the setbacks as a third. And so I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda accordingly. That's how that works.
We have a motion and a seconder then. So if I'm clear, the motion is to divide this into 3 questions, essentially: the rezoning of section 1, well, the text amendment on area 1, text amendment on area 8, and the setbacks as a third. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Did you want to motivate for that?
Well, I mostly spoke to how area 1 feels like an absolute no-brainer and a win for hotels to live in, while I have personal contention over area 8. And so I can tell you at this exact moment that if we were to keep them together, my vote will be to not advance this towards council. But if we are able to split it, I think we can still satisfy certain aspects of what the applicant is trying to accomplish, while coming to a collective decision around area 8.
Okay, and just for staff, maybe just a question in terms of procedural work here. I mean, is that feasible then to split this question, I guess? I mean, or is the ask on parcel 8 and 1, is that tied together, or can that be split for the purposes of determining if this committee makes a recommendation or not to council?
Yeah, so it can certainly be split because this is a non-residential development. When this application does go to council, it's not going for readings as a rezoning application normally would, because we need to seek direction from council to waive the public hearing. And so at that time, we can bring the recommendation from committee that states what the committee would like to do for area 1, area 8, and the rear yard setbacks, and then council can make that decision. And then at the meeting after that is when we would bring the actual amending bylaw forward with the changes as recommended by committee and approved by council. So in short, yes, we can certainly make those changes.
Okay, great, thank you. Are there any other comments on this motion? Then, do you want to speak to the motion now? I would just comment on the motion. I understand where you're going, I think, James, but to me, that's very much based on an individual view, right? That area 1 is acceptable, area 8 is not. I ironically see it differently. I view area 8 as having great potential for a waterfront hotel property. I question area 1, but because we've moved to a motion so quickly, haven't had a chance to speak to some of the other issues that I think are out there around the fact that there is no development proposal attached to either of these parcels, what it does to the land value. So there's some other things that I think need to be raised. So I will oppose the motion simply because I think there's more discussion to happen. And if I was going to split anything, it would just be to split the ask on the hotel and zone from the setback piece, which I think is completely disconnected from the question on the other two. But I'll call the question. All those in favor of Mr. Perry's motion? This motion passes. We will split that into 3.
I just wanted to mention the zoning bylaw. So this is for permitted uses, just the buildable area remains the same as what's currently in there. So whether it's a 6-story hotel or 6-story residential development, just the format would be the same in the zone, just as a point.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Perry, you're still live there. Did you want to continue or?
No, I guess that moves us to area 1 and the text adjustment.
Well, we'll continue discussion because we haven't had a chance to go through everyone else. I know Katrina has a question here as well, or comments. So I will move to Katrina.
Thank you. Am I on?
Oh, hold on. Press the button one more time.
Hello?
Okay.
Yeah, okay. I actually totally agree with James here. But to your comment that it's so 6 stories is the maximum height down by the water. Is that correct? Because I have concerns with that, but then I'm like, they're selling the back condos with views. So I can't see them building higher than those condos in front of them because the top floors are being sold with a view. So, but is that a fair statement? They can't go more than 6 stories down by the water?
So for clarity here, so area, it's on the screen now, area 8B is 6 stories and area 8A is 2.
Is 2.
Yeah, so they'd have to remain within that or else seek a rezoning at a later date, but that's not included in this zoning amendment.
Oh, okay. Okay, so right now it's 6 and 2. Okay. My other, like, I was mostly concerned with, I'm envisioning that area to be a bit more of like a public space. And I'm concerned if a hotel goes there that it's just going to be all this private area and we're not going to have access to it like we do now. And I know that I've heard of other people being like, oh, it'd be nice to have a hotel out here, but all the other land is zoned for a hotel, especially if we cleared area 1. And I have another just random thought question. How do hotels impact the number of doors? Like, I think prior to this council, there was an approval saying they were allowed to do this many doors down there, which increased the amount of residences they could put down there. Doors is what they called them. So how are the number of doors impacted if you put a hotel in? Like, how does that work?
So the hotel would fall under non-residential floor area, which they have a limit on as well. So there's doors and there's also non-residential floor area. So commercial or institutional. That the hotel would fall under the institutional commercial non-residential floor area that they have a limit on as well.
So if you were allowed to, and I'm just hypothetically speaking here, if you were allowed to have 1,000 doors in this area, and then you built 3 hotels and there's way less space, you would still be allowed to do the 1,000 doors. Is that correct?
Correct, but they would have used up their maximum floor area for commercial space. Well,
Mm.
theoretically.
Theoretically. Still feel like it's a bit of a risk. Um, anyway, I guess my comment is I have the same concerns as James with that area 8A and B, and I agree that area 1 seems reasonable for hotel. Well, they've got every other space that they can use for a hotel except for area 8, but um, that's really all my comments and questions right now. I'll pass it over to you, Ian.
Thank you. Kathleen, I see you.
Express
Hold on, there you go.
my views on this issue regarding parcel 8 or whatever you want to designate it. I'm of the opposite view. I was really pleased to see this request for an amendment come up because I think it is so important that Colwood develop an identity and move towards creating less reliance on full-on residential units. I'm extremely pleased to see the strategic plan that the city came up with in terms of developing economically. And I've always questioned, so where is Colwood headed? What does it want to be? And if anything is a great idea, it's tourism. We're on the ocean. It's beautiful. For sure, we have to watch what we're doing and make sure that it doesn't take over everything else. But given that 8A is 2 floors and 8B is 6, this is not a huge issue to me. If there were a request for something bigger, I take James' comments into account, but I just, given the potential that this represents for Colwood, I do want to see the flexibility there for the developer to put hotels and motels where they figure it's going to work. And I don't think it is going to significantly impact everything that was already good about it. So I am extremely pro both numbers 1 and number 8, just because I envisage something really great. I think it enhances the economic base of the city, and I think it enhances the vibrancy of Colwood. And I'm just pleased as sponge to see this come up. So I'm extremely favorable in terms of that, both amendments.
Great, thank you. I will go to Trina and then I'll take a turn for you around for round 2 here.
I took a look at, I tend to agree with Kathleen here. And one of the reasons I'm looking at the approved uses for area 8 already, and when comparing a hotel to perhaps, and I envision a 2-story small boutique hotel type thing, very, because it is only going to be 2 stories rather than the 6 or whatever, they're not going to be the type of hotels that, we typically see as just being a box and sort of low end. I do see it being a little more adventurous than that and architecturally, aesthetically pleasing. But if we're concerned about the amount of people that a hotel is going to bring in, we should be concerned about some other uses that are already permitted there, like, medical buildings or professional buildings, a liquor store, those types of things are, a pet daycare even, like the traffic that's going to be generated by, those type of people coming in rather than just say you've got even a 12 or 24 or however big the hotel is going to be, there'll be less traffic generated than some of the already permitted uses. So again, to add a hotel, I think, and to add to our tourism is actually a good thing for for that particular one. You know, I think with regard to area one, that's, again, that's not a problem for me. I think the more contentious would be the area 8.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I think what Trina said kind of segues into what I want to talk about. And you know, I was fortunate, I think, to, you know, having reviewed the, you know, what was allowable in advance, to understand that, you know, it doesn't really change. Like, personal vision doesn't play into it. 6 stories is 6 stories, whether it's a condo or whether it's a hotel. So that to me wasn't really relevant. And I took the opposite view of Mr. Perry, not just to be difficult, although it is my modus operandi usually. No, just because you made mention of the traffic coming in and out of there, and ironically, I see the upside in that. And you touched on that with what else is permitted there, what else could happen there. And it's long been a fear of mine, and certainly of some others, that this could end up sort of like a gated community, right? That Beachlands effectively is closed off from the rest of Colwood and the wider region, and becomes simply a gated community where the residents are the only ones that come and go. There's very little commercial activity down in that landing area, and thus no reason to go there. And to me, a hotel brings vibrancy in. And I admit I'm biased. I used to be an executive in hotels for many years. And, you know, with hotels comes a lot of traffic coming in and out, constant movement, flow of people, people exploring, people spending money, people looking for shopping, looking for restaurants, looking for coffees. So there's a built-in kind of target market, if you will, there that, you know, would bring a different sense to it. When you think of any waterfront in the world, be it, you know, a poor example is Victoria Harbor, where we have parking lots everywhere. You know, you go to Sydney or other places where, you know, they've done a good job on the waterfront, and the idea is to draw people down there. And that is the overarching goal of Beachlands, was to be a regional destination. It's stated right in the OCP, right? This is the idea, is to bring people down there. So whether the hotel's in area 4, area 8, area 5, I'm not really all that concerned about that. My concerns are very different, I think. And that's that, well, my core concern is that, and I've taken some notes here, is that we have value being granted without secured outcome. And what that means is that, this is like beating a tired horse, but I come back to just up the road in Royal Bay with the proposed neighborhood house, which a lot of housing was sold based on the idea that there was this core community center. This city zoned it well in advance so they could build this. The vision was there. The former mayor, Carol Hamilton, was out there with a gold shovel breaking ground, talking about the amenities that would draw people in. Eventually, once enough housing was sold, the developer quietly sold off that law, and that zoning was used to propose 3 high-rise towers on that lot. And after major pushback from a lot of people, that was brought down to existing 1 and potentially 2 with a 700 square foot Tim Hortons. That was not the vision that was sold to the community. And so what concerns me here is a couple things. Is Beachlands has been great, and I would probably preface it by that you know, they're wonderful people to work with. They've conceded a lot of things. They've supported the city in a great many ways. We know when it came for the parks plan, they were able to grant us additional bonus land up on top of the hill. You know, they came to the table and recognized that was a community concern, and they stepped up. So this isn't a criticism of Beachlands, and it's not to suggest that this is a plan of theirs. But right now, if I'm correct, this is a text amendment that expands this permitted use to hotels and motels, but there's no development application attached to it. There's no concept plan. There's no timeline. There's no obligation to actually construct the hotel. And the red flag for me was, okay, we're changing the zoning on zone 1 and zone 8. If it had just been one of them come up and it was tied to a development plan to say, hey, good news, we've entered into a partnership with company X. We're going to build a 5-story hotel down in area 8. I'd be inclined to support it. Or if they said we're in partnership with company Y and we want to build a roadside hotel across from the museum in area 1, I would support that. But right now, are we comfortable, I guess is the question I'd ask, granting these increased development rights without securing any delivery of the outcome used to justify it? History in Colwood and elsewhere would tell me no, that's a concern. So I'm very much a proponent for hotels in Beachlands. I would like to see it happen. But I can't at this point, until some questions are answered for me. So I need to know, what assurance does the city have that a hotel will actually be built? What public value is captured at rezoning, not later? What happens if the property is sold post rezoning? Are we comfortable waiving a public hearing for a new commercial use? And would council prefer to review this alongside a development proposal? I can't speak for the rest of the council, but I know I certainly would. And in fact, I've spoken to a couple others. So I think there's a piece missing here. We all sort of speak to our personal vision of it shouldn't be that big, or it should be a 2-story boutique hotel. We could recommend to council to go ahead and do parcel 1, parcel 8, whatever it might be, and nothing may ever come of it. That land it will increase in value the second that decision is made at the council table, and it could be sold off for something entirely different, a larger medical clinic, or who knows what it is. So those are the concerns that I have that really aren't specific to either parcel. And so that's why my view coming into this was that I certainly would want to see this go to a public hearing. I think generally I can understand the need to kind of push through some of those. But we're introducing new non-residential uses. You spoke to that a bit, Katrina. Well, what does that mean in terms of where does that density displace to? What does that look like? We're reshaping the layout down there a little bit. It applies to multiple areas there. And as James mentioned, there's long-term implications for traffic, the character of what that neighborhood would look like, whether we agree with the vision or not. It's going to fundamentally change it. You and I have divergent views on it. We're probably representative of the greater community. And a lot of people out there would be very interested, I think, in having their say on this. So to push past a public hearing just to expedite something that frankly has no plan attached to it, I don't see the need for timeliness on this. And I guess that would be my question for staff. And I know Georgia and John are on the line as well, is why now? What's the rush? Why 2 parcels? Why should the city of Colwood push forward on this when we've been burned in the past? Start with staff.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So yes, thank you for those comments. And I think so this has been a discussion that has been occurring at the council table lately that this committee might not be as privy to, but a lot of things that you're speaking to is our current process for development applications and having a rezoning application and not having a development permit application concurrently reviewed with the rezoning application. So historically at the city of Colwood, what we've always done is we have rezoning applications, a property would be rezoned, and then we may not see it develop for 10, 15 years because we do not process development permits concurrently with rezoning applications. We've always required applicants to wait until they receive 3rd reading before they can submit for a development permit application. The reason for that really is on the applicant side, there's uncertainty if they're submitting a development permit application before they have their rezoning. There's uncertainty that the rezoning application could be denied. And the level of detail required when you're submitting a development permit application is certainly a lot more financial commitment to a plan. So I think that sort of addresses those comments related to process. So we have more recently been letting applicants know that they're welcome to submit a development permit concurrently with their rezoning application to try and expedite that process. But yes, we currently do not have a development permit application for a hotel use. Yeah, and then I'm not sure if Georgia or John want to speak specifically to the timing of the application.
I can do that. Georgia may want to chime in. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you, John.
Yeah. Good evening to the committee, and thank you for your questions. Yeah, I think staff answered the question well about the process in terms of bringing a hotel forward. We'd have to incur pretty significant planning development design work in order to pursue a hotel in either of these areas, and it would be risky and maybe not even very respectful to do so without us knowing that we could do a hotel in those areas. As to the timing, just a bit of background. there's information in your package about the hotel task force and the strategic plan for the Greater Victoria area shortage of hotels, and I'm actually on that hotel task force along with I think some members of your staff. And there's a real opportunity and a real need right now for hotel in the capital region and in the Western communities in particular. And so what we have here is service land in Area 1, and Area 2 is basically being developed right now. So we can't put a hotel in Area 2 because it's being developed. So we have service land in Area 1. We have an opportunity to build a hotel and bring that hotel amenity into Colwood in the very near future. Whereas getting to the servicing and getting all the way down to Area 8 is just, by definition of the process we're going through and developing accretively, that we will be some years out. And so the reason a hotel in Area 8 is it just seems to us the most natural location for a semi-destination hotel that could host weddings, family reunions, waterfront events. There's very little waterfront access in the West Shore for the broader public, and hotels offer a much broader public access to the water than a private residence, which is otherwise permitted in that area, or a private office. So that will come later, but there's an opportunity now to build a hotel. In fact, we met today with our hotel evaluator and appraiser and feasibility analyst who's going to report back to us very shortly. And we can't make any promises at this point, but we're very enthusiastic about the opportunity of moving ahead with a hotel in the near time frame in Area 1, as opposed to letting it just sit. Georgia, do you want to add anything to that? Oh, you're muted, Georgia.
Sorry, John. Thank you. And good evening, committee members. Yeah, and I think just to add a little bit more onto that, I just wanted to confirm as well, Area 1 per the OCP is also the Seaside Village designation. So a hotel use would be compliant. There are a variety of other commercial uses already allowed. The hotel motel was sort of omitted from that, as Mairi had said, sort of those zones were sort of based on the plans as at, the master development plan a number of years ago. I don't think it was a specific rationale to exclude it. I think in my mind, it was likely more of an oversight from these two sub areas. I also just wanted to clarify as well, as it relates to both Area 1 and 8. Both of those areas already permit a variety of commercial uses and hotel, as well as residential uses, and hotel uses actually generate less traffic than residential uses, and in many cases, less traffic than other alternate commercial retail users. And further to that, they generate traffic at often off-peak times, so it's not adding or exacerbating traffic issues at those AM and PM peak hours. And I also just wanted to clarify specifically around Area 8, but both really, that there would be no reduction we are not proposing any reduction in the parks or open spaces. The Area 8 sort of vision is for that more destination type hotel with that amenity space as well, that likely would flank the public plaza that's going to sort of act as that heart of the broader community and really that regional destination. And we see in many ways that adding further vibrancy to that core commercial area of the site.
Great, thanks, Georgia, and thanks, John. Appreciate the context. I will go next to Katrina, who's been waiting patiently here. There we go.
Am I okay? Actually hearing that none of the green space is going to be taken up, I think, and hearing what Ian had to say, I guess that I didn't realize that it would be the same. Like if I had to choose, I would rather have a nice hotel down there that's 6 stories and 2 stories than a condo, because that's the alternative, right? Pretty much. So is that
There's a lot of there's many other commercial opportunities there.
right?
There's a lot of commercial that's available. I know I'm talking about the mic, but
Mm-hmm.
sorry.
Yeah, I mean,
it's
it's
not a residential hotel. There's all-
right. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one. I don't, and I think to Ian's point, we don't know what it looks like right now. So like if it came, ideally it came with like a request to say, this is what we want to do. And then we could say, oh yeah, I support that. Whereas right now it's a bit of a dark hole in terms of, and then I didn't even realize that there was that other concern that you can get zoning for something and then it kind of go the other way. I never really knew about that. So anyways, that's my only comment.
Thank you, Katrina. I'll go to Kathleen.
So I just want to speak about the process issue, and listening to Mary it was really helpful. The way I see it, and I probably see it given that process is kind of my thing and it's my training. I don't see any problem with now us as a committee saying the bylaw will change for these permitted uses. I'm really glad to hear your concern, Ian, about the bait and switch. But correct me if I'm wrong, Mary, but that can be dealt with at the development point, right? So we're not, I don't see that there is any danger procedurally. And hearing from the applicant and how we possibly have the ability to get a hotel in area 1. I see absolutely no harm if we all are now kind of changing our point of views, or at least the majority is kind of sees the addition of hotels as a good thing. Then procedurally, again, it's a conceptual thing. It's adding it in to a whole lot of uses in the bylaw anyhow, right? It's broad. And there is nothing whatsoever in the bylaw that is designed to prevent bait and switch. Bait and switch gets prevented at a later stage. Correct me if I'm wrong, planning department, but just from a procedural point of view, like if we agree in principle, or most of us, that yes, vibrancy and creating a solid economic base is where we want to go. I think we're getting hepped up on something that we really don't need to worry about. We've got hotels and motels in area 4, 5, and 6. You could get baited and switched for any of these permitted uses. It's just about what we can permit by way of bylaw, and it does not mean we don't have another kick at the can. So that, I'm glad to hear, Ian, your point of view in terms of having a hearing from the public. It would be good to hear from the public, but perhaps, again, that might be something we could try and become a little more comfortable with in the context of looking at an actual development proposal. So that's how I see it.
Well, thank you, Kathleen. I think that's yeah, it's a great perspective, and I would hesitate to use the term bait and switch. I know what you mean. I've used it too. No, I know the good folks at Path up across the road really took offense to me using that a few years ago when I described what happened at 360 Latoria. But the reality is that once the zoning is granted, council's leverage is exhausted. When you talk about procedural moves, if the land is later sold or held for speculation, the city can't require a hotel to be built, and the zoning doesn't revert. So future councils will inherit the consequences that this council puts in place. Just like this council inherited the zoning, the density increase in beachlands, which was a very controversial issue at the time. Once it's there, and anything can be built. But a couple of good points were raised, as Mr. Perry said too. There's a lot of uses for both of these properties right now. This isn't a one or the other or anything like that. And I think there'd be a wide range of views on it. And that's why I wanted to see a public hearing. I didn't want to see a public hearing to pick it apart, to criticize the applicants, nothing like that. I guess my point in also raising that there is no development application attached to this right now is that there is time for that. There is time to go, and this is the political side of it, if you will. There's time to go out to the community and say, this is what's being thought of here. What do you think? And at the end of the day, a decision will be made by council, one way or the other. But I think anytime you can engage more of the community and be more transparent, you're doing a better job in terms of governance. And there just isn't a need to, I guess the options that were presented for us, the staff recommendation was, you know, skip the public hearing, go straight to recommendation. It would go on the consent agenda for council. Theoretically, you know, it would move forward, but in all likelihood, it would be pulled off the consent agenda and the discussion would happen. So, you know, I feel like in many ways we'd be dealing with the inevitable anyway by going to a public hearing, because I think that's what's going to happen when it goes to council, is that council will want to get more feedback and be cautious about this a little bit. But, you know, for clarity, I certainly think that the applicants have every intention to look to build a hotel or hotels here. You know, just to be clear, John and Georgia, not questioning your motives here at all, if that's the you know, the perception. But I think we are in a position where ideally I would have gone myself and recommended option 2, where we did first and second reading on this and then went to a public hearing so that we could move things along in a pretty timely way. You know, we're early in the year. Really, we'd be adding what, a couple weeks to the whole thing when all is said and done. But now we split it out, so we have to deal with all three. My suggestion might be that we deal with the 2 pieces here, section 1 and 8, and then talk about the setbacks as a third recommendation, if that works. So I'm going to propose the first motion and just see how it goes, because I think there's conflicting views, but I think at the end of the day, for me, I would like to propose option 2 in application to both 1 and parcel 8. We'll start with parcel 1 though. So on parcel 1, I would propose option 2, that we recommend to council that we do first and second reading and then hold a public hearing. So that's specific to parcel 1 on Machosen Road. I don't know if there's a seconder or not. And just for clarity, option 2, the key difference here is that it goes to a public hearing, whereas the staff recommendation bypassed that. This would be for parcel 1 on Machosen Road. Okay, so we have a seconder. Any questions, comments, debate?
Can I just
Amendment? Oh, sorry,
make
go
a
ahead.
comment? So my suggestion would be that we would have 4 different recommendations that you would vote on whether you agree or disagree to add a hotel to area 1, agree or disagree to add a hotel to area 8, and then vote on the setbacks. And then I think you can vote on waiving the public hearing or not as another recommendation, not voting on the public hearing for each of those 3 amendments.
Sure, yeah, that makes sense. So why don't we do that? So I'd amend that to be the area 1 proposal, that we support a hotel motel addition to that. That would be the first motion that I put on the floor. Are you okay with it? Yeah, okay, so we're good there. Any comments on that? Okay, I'll call the question. All those opposed? Okay, so that carries. I will feel like just moving things, so I'll also make the same motion for area 8, that we recommend to council that we add hotels and motels to that, and then we'll decide on public hearing later. Any questions, concerns? Sorry? Oh, you need a seconder. Yeah, is there a seconder? I have a seconder. Okay. All those opposed? Mr. Perry is opposed. That passes. And then we haven't discussed the setbacks, so let's push that off for a moment and just talk about, well, that's actually, we need to talk about the setbacks because that would fall under the same public hearing, correct? Yeah, okay, so let's then just go into discussion on the setbacks at this point. If there's any questions, concerns, questions for staff from anybody in the committee. See, Kathleen just beat you, James, by a hair. Okay, please go ahead.
Some context and I guess a bit of a timeline. I found it interesting that the request for a relaxation of the setback came so late in the game. And so I'm wondering, and I'm also like, have to state that my position is that, and I apologize for the overly technical language, but it's pretty squishy. So, I do have concerns about the way that a development looks, and it does, that's a lot. I'm wondering why wasn't this planned beforehand? And just, I'm not terribly comfortable with the setbacks, so I'm kind of just looking for some discussion in that regard, to see if, okay, why doesn't squishy matter? Or why should I be okay with squishy?
Yeah, so the standard setback across Colwood residential zones is 6 meters. To be quite frank with you, the planning rationale behind a setback for the rear yard is to provide public space and consistency. So with this application, the staff is of the opinion that as long as there's consistency across the neighborhood, it maintains the neighborhood quality, right? So you know what you're getting into, the developer knows what they're getting into prior to anything being built, rather than ad hoc amendments later down the road. So that's part of the rationale behind the staff recommendation. Yeah.
I can also just add another thing before Georgia and John speak, but I think also at the time of subdivision of these lots actually being created, they were not at the point of actually developing plans for those single family lots. So now as they're selling those lots and they're creating plans for the purpose of building permits, they are finding that it is difficult to fit a house with the existing setbacks and consideration of the depth of the single family lots. So we've had a few conversations with potential builders who would be coming forward for variances because they're just finding that it is difficult to plan a house on the lot. So I think it would be likely a common application that we would see for a variance for the rear yard setback. So at the time that they submitted the rezoning application to add hotel, staff suggested that we could integrate the reduction in the rear yard setback into this rezoning application, given we were already sort of opening the zone up. So that's just a little more context for you.
Okay, I see Mr. Perry.
With regards to the setbacks of the yards, there's language in the reports and other parts of the appendices talking about increasingly restrictive. There's a development potential, and we're looking for the efficient use of the area. And even in the letter of rationale, it mentions that they've already done lot servicing and road construction and are now trying to fit more in there. And to piggyback off of a previous sentiment around, like, we are giving more, and for what in return? Like, before you built the roads, you knew the lot sizes. Like, it just feels, yeah, very late in the game. Like, why are we in this position now of, well, like, the road's already built, so now you kind of have to give it to me type sentiment? And again, it's not trying to be overly critical. It's just frustrating from my perspective to be in this position where, now we know we're going to be faced with a lot of variance requests because of how tight it's being attempted to fit in order to get as many lots as possible within it. So I definitely have some personal struggle with the request and what it achieves for the developer versus what it achieves for the individual who will own that eventual property.
Okay, I will go to Kathleen.
Just to kind of piggyback on James' sentiments. And again, I'm kind of, I just want to hear everybody's point of view on this. But you've encapsulated exactly what I felt when I saw that. Why now? And my thoughts are, while it is more efficient to have a smaller setback, perhaps it makes more sense for it to be done ad hoc. I don't know how many builders are saying we can't do this. I don't know exactly the circumstances, but my thoughts are, again, because it's so squishy, my preference would be to hear on a case by case basis, because, you know, every lot is situated a little bit differently. I'd love to hear about what the building is that is being proposed, so that my notion of squishiness is either allayed or it's not. So I find it very difficult to, you know, give carte blanche to something I'm a little unsettled about. I just, you know, it's interesting that 6 meters was the setback, or is kind of the standard. I looked at our own little postage stamp yard, because, you know, and we bought small on purpose. And literally it's a lot bigger than that setback. So, you know, from my own point of view and my own perspective, it ain't huge. So taking another meter, it's like, I just have this vision of a really creepy house. Like, no one's going to want windows. You're going to put blinds up and all of those concerns. I mean, we have setbacks for a reason. I imagine privacy is one of them. Another one is just this notion of not being sardined. And you know, I suppose if I hadn't known that, you know, the standard in Colwood was 6, or the minimum standard was 6 meters, I may not have felt so uneasy about it, but I do. I just think that's very small. I know that with respect to the ocean, the ones with oceanfront, it's not going to matter, because their setback doesn't matter, does it? Because it's facing the ocean. But it's those other 2 strips on either side of the roads who are going to be very, very close to one another. And part of me thinks, well, that's the market. Will the market bear it? It's not my issue, but, you know, cities do this all the time, and I think it's for a reason. So I'm not feeling that comfortable with the proposed amendment as a whole.
Thank you. I will go to who's next here. No, Trina is next. She's flashing. There you go.
I'm curious, in area 3, the house, the lots have already gone out to the marketplace. Is that correct? Okay. So I'm wondering if what's happened here, and this is pure speculation, and I think only the developer may be able to speak to this, is that what they're finding is, with the price of the lots, that the marketplace is suggesting that they perhaps would like larger homes, which would require a smaller setback. And, you know, so maybe there's pushback that's happening in the marketplace, that the houses have to be bigger. If I'm going to be paying this much for my lot, I want a bigger living space. And I'm just wondering if that perhaps is why we're seeing this now at this stage, rather than, you know, when the planning was going into developing the lot sizes and the roads and whatever. So if someone could speak to that, you know, to either verify or tell me that my my thoughts are incorrect, I'm happy to hear either way, but I'm just speculating as to perhaps the marketplace is dictating this now rather than anything else.
And I think, Trina, it's maybe a good point to interject and suggest that Georgia or John maybe speak to, you know, provide some context to, as you said, the why, you know, why now, and what is dictating this? Is it, you know, market pressures? What is it? Just so we can have some understanding of why we're seeing this at this point.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
So I don't know if you're still available there, John or Georgia.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you for the questions, committee members. What we've been hearing, we have been out in the market, we've transacted on a number of the lots, and we do have a wide variety of different lot typologies that we have offered to the market within Area 3. And what we're hearing from now many of our purchasers of it, as they've gotten into the deep, because we are selling the lots and then the home builders, and we're working with some of the, in our opinion, very best home builders on the West Shore, very experienced. And as they've gotten into the more detailed design stages, what they're finding is just there is, because of this, the front and rear 6 meter setback, there is in certain dimensions, for example, like the depth of their ideal garage, it's just sort of tight in certain areas because of that rear yard setback. And so what we've heard from a number of them, that they, by having that 1 meter variance, it would give them a lot more flexibility to come up with the sort of most desirable and efficient floor plan of the ultimate home design on the property. And our rationale of applying it across the entirety of the site is that it then gives sort of an equal, fair framework that all builders and ultimately all homeowners are living within. And so that the committee and that ultimately homeowners aren't dealing with these one-off sort of requests that are coming forward, which I do anticipate there would be a number of, and instead it's an equal set of sort of setback rules that are applicable to all these lots that can be communicated at the outset to those purchasers. And then by our rationale as well of applying that for the variance for the rear yard setback as opposed to the front yard setback was to balance the functional and efficient home designs while also having minimal impact on the adjacent properties and ensuring consistency while maintaining an appealing and welcoming public realm from that street facing side. So instead of requesting the variance from their front yard setback, we had thought the rear yard setback would likely be the more appropriate place to seek that additional space.
Thank you for that.
Thanks, Jordan. Yeah, I see no other lights on at the moment. I think for me, to be honest with you, I'm fairly nonplussed about it. And I only say that because it's not to be flippant, but it is precedent setting, right? So you're changing your setbacks, but the context for me, I think, is important in that this is not in, this isn't a variance request in an existing neighborhood where somebody is saying, I want to build a monster home. You see that in Oak Bay, for example. You drive through and there's sort of the older character homes, and then somebody buys, and the value of the land, as you said, is such that they slap a giant home that fills the whole lot, and it looks so out of character. We are not building a legacy neighborhood or an old neighborhood here. We're building, a greenfield development or brownfield development. Everything is kind of going up at the same time within the same parameters. So the uniqueness of it maybe takes away any unease for me around the precedent. It's kind of the market will pay what the market will pay, and these folks are going into it with open eyes and understanding that, okay, you want a little bit more garage, you get a little less distance between you and the neighbor. It may not appeal to all of us, but some of these folks, I think, their proximity to the ocean and such is that, okay, I want a bigger, better house, and that's where they're going to spend their time. And I would liken it to the opposite scenario whereby you bought a home in, West Hills in Langford or even in Royal Bay, where you knew going into it that you were going to have a smaller yard, you were going to have, different space than you would have in the rest of Colwood. So I think because it's a unique scenario, I'm personally not opposed to it, but I'm not committed either way. I think at the end of the day, the market will either support it or they won't, and that's up for them to decide. But I don't know if anyone wants to make a motion or has any more questions or concerns on that one. Oh, I see Mr. Perry there.
To play out one of the thoughts presented, where by giving a blanket variance effectively to any lot, that the odd number, what would probably be argued as the minority of lots that would need a variance no longer need to request it. And so rather than developers building a house that just ekes over by a handful of inches and then getting a variance, we're now giving them an extra meter and we're still going to get an influx of additional variances. I can imagine that if the everyone's going to try to build to the maximum of their capacity, and there will always be instances where they want to maximize the orientation of certain floor plans, and so I still believe that variances will still be prevalent, and we're just going to be arguing over the 1 meter later, regardless. And when you look at what a reduction from 6 meters to 5 meters represents, like, that is a substantial, like, 20-ish% of your yard disappears, and it turns into something arguably unusable. So what are we doing with our backyard setback in the first place if you don't allocate at least something? But that is just kind of where I don't necessarily follow the rationale there. Unless we truly believe that it's the majority of lots that will all need variances in order to fit any size of house that is considered viable.
If I may, so I think from a neighborhood character perspective, consistency is the most important thing. So, as we've mentioned, this reduction in the rear yard setback would apply to all single family lots in beachland. So it's unique to that development for that 5 meters, but it would be consistent across the entire beachlands development. So it is a minimum, so it's minimum of 5 meters. So they could have a higher rear yard setback. But if we reduce it to 5 meters, I would suspect that we would generally see 5 meters. They're going to build the homes to the setbacks. They're not going to build larger setbacks or anything like that. So I think when we're comparing reducing the rear yard setback for all single family lots versus having variances, then I think we're getting into inconsistent neighborhood character. So you're going to see homes that have 6 meters and then other homes that have 5 meters, and you will see a difference on the ground. But if every house is 5 meters, you won't really know the difference between 5 meters versus 6 meters. So I just wanted to make that commentary about how rear yard setbacks impact neighborhood character, and best practices really is consistency.
Thanks, Mary. I appreciate it. Yeah, I think I'll be honest with you. I said at the outset, I mean, I'm not opposed to it, but then again, I maybe don't see it as impactful as others, and I'm not trying to negate anyone else's opinion on this. I mean, I look at it again, use that example of, I personally wouldn't want to live in West Hills. I think it's really crowded and condensed and dense, but for a lot of people, they absolutely love it. And Royal Bay is the same way. I hear criticism all the time from other communities about Royal Bay, and it's cookie cutter and on Legoland and all these houses crammed together, and how could anyone live there? And yet there's some very happy people that live in Royal Bay, myself included. Like a lot of young families, a lot of people that bought there that value the community and where it is. So the market will bear what the market bears, and if there's uniformity generally across the across the development, I suspect that those folks that want to invest, they're probably more interested in the size and quality of their home than they are whether it's 3 feet more of grass there. But again, that's just my opinion, and I'm not trying to sway anyone else on this. I'm open to a motion from anybody who wants to put one forward. I guess I would just ask the question, staff here again too, just procedurally again, if committee voted to oppose this piece here, then it wouldn't be involved in the public hearing discussion, obviously, right? Because it's not being recommended, correct?
So that recommendation would go to council, and then they would decide if they agree with committee.
Correct. And then if they chose, it would still roll into the public hearing then, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Is there anyone who wants to put forward a motion on this one, or? I'm not seeing one. I'm happy to make a motion personally that to recommend to council that we support the setback amendments. Again, I say it's not the final say on it. I suppose there'd be other folks on council who could have very different opinions. Again, just mine. I don't see the danger in setting a precedent within a brownfield development that is kind of unique. I would have greater concerns in an older neighborhood, but that's my logic on it. But I'll start with that anyway, and if it's voted down, we'll go to the next one. But I'll propose that we recommend to council supporting the amendment to the rear setbacks. Any discussion? Okay, we have a seconder. Discussion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those opposed? So the motion fails. Chair and Trina the only in support. So I will look to the council or committee for another motion. Mr. Perry.
I motion that the committee, the does not recommend it to council, given that they can still supersede and put it to public hearing anyway.
Thank you, Mr. Perry.
Make sure that's in the wording. Thank you.
Discussion on that at all? Seeing none. All of those opposed? So same, the chair and Trina opposed, that motion passes. So that will lead us then to the public hearing discussion then. Do we recommend that the public hearing is bypassed or not? I guess is the general idea. I don't know if you want to discuss it first or if we want to put a motion on the floor. Mr. Perry, please go ahead.
When it comes to the notifications, I know that we've talked previously about the ineffectual sort of range that these notifications can have. And when you consider that some of these things are happening in the depths of the beachlands with literally no one around, I think it's the edge of the lot that is the 150 meters. So I think that there will be a reasonable catchment, but to some of the other discussion points, what is happening in the beachlands is a iconic moment for Colwood that maybe more than just Royal Bay should have the opportunity to weigh in on. So I really do like that there's items in like the newsletter and there was a couple other things that you mentioned to include in the publication. So if public participation is to occur, I just want to make sure that we have a good enough catchment to get like the representation of Colwood, not just the immediate locals.
If I may, I just would like to make a comment about process for the public hearing. So, as we've mentioned, the Local Government Act prohibits us from holding a public hearing for residential development. Now, because we have split the amendments for the amending bylaw into 3 separate recommendations, the rear yard setback component is for residential, and technically we are prohibited from holding a public hearing for residential. So I just thought I would make the comment that prior to going to council, we will just seek legal advice on whether or not the setback should be actually removed from the public hearing and have a separate amending bylaw in which we would notify ahead of first, second, and third as we normally would for a rezoning application. So I just wanted to make that comment that I'm not prepared to like decide on what that process is this evening, but we will commit to seeking legal advice prior to going to council.
Thank you, Mari. Do we have a motion at all on this or? Sorry, Mr. Perry, I thought you might be making a motion. Okay, well, I'll move that we recommend to council that we hold a public hearing as was originally listed with the first and second reading and then public hearing. Don't know if there's a second or not. Okay, Mr. Perry seconds. Any discussion on that at all? You look like you want to ask a question. Sorry, go ahead, Kathleen.
The only thing I wanted to say was perhaps we could make the motion subject to legality because we don't know if we can or can't do it.
Yeah, it's fair. I think we could add in there that.
If I could for a second.
Yeah.
This whole thing will go back to council. We won't change the bylaw. They'll get the committee recommendation. And then when they look at it, we'll separate the bylaw out. If that's council's wish, we'll create 2 bylaw amendments and bring the appropriate amendment bylaw to a public hearing. Yeah, it'll work out in the wash.
Okay, so from what I understand, staff will just take that up. We don't need to actually include it in the motion. But...
Correct.
Okay, so the motion then is what we generally see here, that council will hold a public hearing, or recommend that council hold a public hearing for the items raised tonight. Any further discussion? No. All those in favor? Unanimous. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Some good discussion there. I like it. That brings us to the ultimate agenda item of the night, number 6, which would be adjournment. Can I have a mover to adjourn? Don't need one. Oh, James is one. Okay, there we go. Okay, all those in favor? Yes, we're good. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it. Take care.